Hi, good morning everyone. So, before we start, please let me introduce to you the group members of Group B. First, I am Joeline Sorana, and we also have Hazel Macapobre, Vincent Aguirre, and Jefferson Rivera. Okay, so before we start guys, let me tell you one quote from Benjamin Franklin. He said that don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. So it means don't do things tomorrow if you can do it today. So don't do tomorrow what you can do today. Stop procrastinating, stop the procrastination. Time is gold guys. Use the time wisely and properly. Don't waste time. Okay? So let's proceed. So our topic for today is all about the physical development of infancy and toddler. Cephalocaudal and proximodistal pattern. So what is cephalocaudal trend? It is the postnatal growth from conception to 5 months when the head grows more than the body. This cephalocaudal trend of growth that applies to the development of fetus also applies in the first month after birth. So, cephalocaudal, it refers to the pattern of changing spatial proportions over time during growth. So, one example of this is the gradual change in head relative to the body size during the human growth. So, infants learn to use their upper limbs before their lower limbs. The same pattern occurs in the head area because the top parts of the head, like the eyes and the brains, they grow faster compared to the lower parts like for example the jaw. The eyes and the brain, they grow faster than the lower parts such as the jaw. Okay, next is the proximodistal trend. So what is the proximodistal trend? This is a prenatal growth from 5 months to birth, when the fetus grows from the inside of the body outwards. So this also applies in the first month after birth. And proximodistal trend also, it comes from the Latin word proxim, which means close, and this meaning away from, because the trend essentially describes a path from the center outward. And the proximodistal trend is the tendency also for more general functions of limbs to develop more specific or fine motor skills. And proximodistal pattern of development is where growth starts at the center of the body and moves towards the extremities like the hands and the fingers, like that. And example of proximodistal pattern is the early development of muscular control of the trunk and the arms relative to the hands and the fingers. So I hope that you understand what is cephalocaudal trend and proximodistal trend and the difference of the two. So let's proceed to the height and weight of the infant and the toddler. So height and weight, it is actually normal for the newborn babies to drop 5 to 10% of their body weight within a couple of weeks of birth. And this is due to the baby's adjustment to the neonatal feeding. So, okay lang yung normal lang yung magbaba yung weight ng baby 5 to 10% kasi nga they are still adjusting dun sa neonatal feeding. So nag-adjust pa sila, and because of that, okay lang yun, normal lang yung bumababa yung kanilang weight. So next is the breastfed babies. They said that breastfed babies are typically heavier than bottle-fed babies through the first 6 months. So why is that? So diba, generally breastfed newborn gain weight faster than formula-fed babies for the first 3 months of their life. One likely reason for this is that breast milk, the milk that came from the mother or from the mommy, is a dynamic and ever-changing food. It is composed of the exact nutrition that the baby needs at that stage. So, kompleto yung kailangan ng mga baby na nutrition, nandun na siya sa gatas ng ina. That's why mas lumalaki siya compare dun sa mga yung formula-fed babies, ganun. On the other hand, formula is a static composition of ingredients. So that is why breastfed babies are typically heavier than bottle-fed babies until the 6 months. Next is, in general, an infant's length increases by about 30% in first 5 months. So, yung baby, lumalaki sila 30% sa first 5 months. So, lumalaki sila. And next is, a baby's weight usually triples during the first year, but slows down in the second year of life. So, kapag bago pa ipinanganak, in the first year, mabilis pa lumalaki yung baby. Tapos pagka nag 1 year old na, gano'n, parang nagsa-slow down na yung paglaki ng baby. Ganon. And of course, it is normal that, and it's not an alarm that low percentages as long as an infant's progress along a natural curve of a steady development. So it is not a cause for alarm if low percentages yung bumababa sa weight ng mga baby yan. Okay, so I hope that you understand everything that I have told you guys about the proximodistal trend and the cephalocaudal trend, and about the height and weight of the baby. So thank you for listening. We can now proceed to the other discussion. Thank you.
It's already tackled about cephalo and proximodistal trend, height, and weight. So let's proceed to the brain development. Now, brain development is the most dramatic changes in the brain the first 2 years in life, spreading connections to dendrites to each other. So remember, neurons, dendrites, axons, and synapses. So brain development, this brain growing on a passing rate. On a newborn baby has all of the brain cells, neurons, but it's the connection between these cells that really the brain work, or at least 1 million new neuron connections or synapses are made every seconds or any other time in life. Now, myelination or myelinization. So what do you mean by myelination? So myelination, the process by which the axons are covered and insulated with fat cells. So myelination of the nervous system proceeds gradually during first year and beyond in the head downward sequence. So increasing myelination of the motor system allows to the infant to do more. For example, lift the head, reach out, roll over, and crawl. Eventually, walk and run. So, nasa tayo gitawag ka depressed brain sa infant and toddlers. So, nga nung depressed brain man. So, kana nga depressed brain sa bata is magmatter na siya sa kinalakihan ng bata, sa environment. Siyempre, for example, ako, kanang sukad, pagbata sa ko is, nagdako jud ko nga conservative family ko. Kung unsa akong kuan isuot is di pwede sila ha. Kaya nga nagdako ko sa conservative nga family, di ba? Irespeto na ako na. Muna na akong mindset. Conservative akong family, so di ko pwede nana. Di ba? So now, let's proceed to motor development. So motor development along this aspect of motor development, infants and toddlers begin from reflexes to gross motor skills and fine motor skills. So since it's already tackled in our first year about the gross and the fine motor skills, so what is gross motor skills? So ang gross motor skills is the working of our body. Tanang body na to mulihok, di ba? Gross. And then when we say fine motor skills, is starting with our fingers, di ba? Fingers nga ginagmarang alihok. So, mostly sa bata is fine din na ilaha, fine motor skills. Di pa na sila pwede mag-gross. Mag-gross na sila mga 6 months. Mga 6 months pataas. Mga 5 months ka na. So, there are some reflexes of the baby. First is sucking reflex. So, the sucking reflex, the rotting reflex, is most evident when an infant's cheek is stroked. So, for example, kabantay mo ng inyong tudlo ihungit sa bata. Siyempre, mga nga dyan ang bata, no? Kaya nagtuon na sila nga, bibiron to siya, gatas na po to siya, mga nga to siya. Kaya wala to siya alam nga, unsa to yung gihungit sa bata, di ba? So, muna siya ang sucking reflex. So, next is rotting reflex. The baby responds by turning his head in the direction of the touch and opening their mouth for feeding. So, this time is, if ma-feel sa bata nga na something silang cheek, kanang, syempre, mo rotate na pod na siya. Kung asa to nga direction nga na something silang cheek, na nagtuo sila nga ready to feed na sad, to patotoy na sad. Diba? So, mo na siya ang rotating reflex. Now, let's proceed to gripping reflex. Baby will grasp anything that is placed in their palm. So, for example, accurate naman, no? So, for example is, imong kamot i-place nimo sa palm sa bata. Siyempre, i-grab siya na niya, no? Kung kaya man siya na-feel siya something sa iyang palm. Na next is, inyong buhok. Siyempre, diba, kabantay mo na. Once nga mahawiran niyo iyang buhok, na siya ma-feel nga something nga, sa man nga sa buhok, So, i-grab na sa niya. Siyempre, langkat na sa yung buhok diha, no? So, mo na siya ang gripping reflex. So, if you grab the anything that is placed in their palm. So, next is curling reflex. So, when the inner sole of the baby's foot is stroked, that is curling of toes. And then the outer sole of the baby's foot, the baby's foot is spreading of toes. So, for example, mo niya ang foot sa bata. And then, when the inner sole of the baby's foot is stroked, it curls of toes. Mukungkong na siya. Kung once ang inner sole niya kana is something, no, na when the outer sole of the baby's it spreads out. Muana siya, kabantay man siguro man kanang mukalatrag ang tiil sa bata. Tas muana na pud siya, kaya na siya na-feel siyang outer or inner sole. Mr. Aguirre will continue the other reflexes of the babies. Thank you, and once again, good morning everyone.
So good morning everyone. My name is Vincent Madres Aguirre and I will continue the report of Miss Macapobre. So next is startle motor reflex. So when we talk about startle motor reflex, infants would usually panic or startle every time there is a sudden sound created that disturbs them. As a matter of response, they usually move their bodies by throwing their heads or legs and arms. Some are crying as a matter of response to fear. For example, kapag may kulog at kidlat, kadalasan sa mga kabataan nagugulat. Kadalasan yun sa mga bata, nangyayari talaga yun. At sa pagkagulat nila, yung iba nanginginig, umiiyak, at kahit tayo, naranasan rin natin yan kapag meron mga sounds or sudden noise na nangyayari, na hinahanap natin kung saan nanggagaling yun, at yun rin ang ginagawa ng mga bata at kadalasan sa kanila umiiyak dahil sa takot. So next we have Gallant reflex. Infants respond to this reflex when the middle or lower part of their spinal cord is touched. As the part is moved, it encourages the infant to practice movement in preparation to crawling and walking. So, based on our own experience at lahat tayo nakapansin nito, sa tuwing bata pa, hinahawakan ang sa likod na banda ng mga bata para mag-serve ito, or this will serve as their inspiration to crawl, walk, or stand up. By doing this, gini-encourage natin yung mga kabataan na gumapang at lumakad sa ganun na edad. So last is we have tonic neck reflex. So when the infant's head is turned to one side, his arm on that side will straighten, and the opposite arm or elbow folds towards the shin or neck. It is called as a fencing position. So based on my own experience, as what I have observed when a child is at our house, so when he looks at right, his arm will follow, then the opposite arm will fold. So that will pose as a archer position. So I will post some picture that will serve as examples. Now that you know about the motor development, let's proceed to gross motor skill and fine motor skills. First is we have gross motor skills. Parents or guardians of the infants would feel the satisfaction after seeing the babies improve their movement upon growing up. So, lahat tayo nakapansin na grabe yung saya ng mga parents natin kapag merong bagong movement or na-improve yung galaw ng bata, katulad ng kapag nakatayo, naka-crawl, or he or she is able to close or open her hands. The observed changes reflects how the babies adapt to learning new movements. As time passes by, these movements help them explore new things. So, the improvement is a step-by-step process. So, katulad ng una, he or she is able to crawl. After that, tatayo na yung bata, marunong na siya tumayo. So, kapag nakatayo siya, makapag-explore siya ng mga bago na learning skills, katulad na kapag nakatayo na, pwede na siya maglakad, tumakbo, tumalon, at marami pang iba. So that simple skill will help him improve and master the basic skills. So next we have fine motor skills. So when we talk about fine motor skills, these are focused to the upper limbs, specifically the arms and wrists. This helps the babies learn how to grip things and do actions such as holding, tapping, writing, and lifting objects. So the best example for this is when we taught babies how to close or open their hands. So this will serve as a guide for them how to hold their bottle feeder or biberon. So by simply doing closing and tapping or opening their hands, this will do, or they will be able to explore many more movements, and close and opening their hands is the first thing they learn. Next, they will be able to hold things, to tap, write, and lift many objects. In order for them to exhibit these fine motor skills, infants are expected to learn the action truly over time. it will require eye-hand coordination, meaning the action of the hands are dependent to what they are observing through sight. So basically, this says that is what they see is what they do. So we don't do bad things that a child will see because he or she will follow what we have done. And if we do some instruction to a baby, we don't do it verbally, but we do it with action, just like close, open, close, open. So that's all. Thank you for listening. Let's proceed to the next reporter, Mr. Rivera.
Sensory and perceptual development. So, the newborn senses the world into which or she is born through her or his senses of vision, hearing, touch, and taste and smell. So, ideally, as he or she advances physically, his or her sensory and perceptual abilities also develop. So, in a few short months, their visions has greatly improved as the children can see objects from the other sides of the room and make out patterns and colors. Children can hear sounds even before birth, and as infants, they begin to distinguish among these sounds. The ability to this directly influences children's language and development. Perceptual development is closely linked to physical development because children's growing motor abilities allow them to explore their environments in new ways. Children can cause their mobility to reach for objects or play with objects in different ways. So as they get older, they will be able to use sensory input to change an actions or behavior. For example, children may be able to perceive how to move their body around obstacles or know how to develop in their hands objects that they perceive to be fragile. Children learn about their world by engaging their senses with their surroundings. This is why appropriately stimulating environment and meaningful engagement and interactions are encouraged for young children. So, what are some research findings regarding newborns' visual perceptions? So, the question number 1 is, can newborns see? So, the answer is, babies sees things best from 8 to 12 inches away. This is the perfect distance for gazing up into the eyes of mom or dad. Any farther than that, a newborn see mostly blurry shapes because they are nearsighted. At birth, a newborn's eyesight is between 220 or 220 to 400. So, newborns prefer to look at faces over the shapes and objects and around shapes with light and dark borders. So, what are the key features of perceptual development? So, perceptual development refers to how children start taking in, interpreting, and understanding sensory input. So, perceptions allows to children adopt and interact with their environment through the use of their senses. Children are born with the ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. Okay, so the second question is, can newborns hear? So, newborn has been hearing sounds since way back in the womb. Mother's heartbeat, the gurgles of her digestive system, and even the sounds of her voice and the voices of other family members are part of a baby's world before birth. So once your baby is born, the sounds of the outside world come in loud and clear. Okay, so let's proceed to the third question. So, can newborns differentiate odors? So, yet, newborns are fascinated by the visual world and they show remarkable abilities to recognize different sights, sounds, textures, and also the odors. But newborns like sweet smells, taste. Newborns prefer sweet tastes. They are generally avoid sour, bitter, salty tastes, and sight. So that is the fourth question. So let's proceed to the fifth question. So, can newborns feel pain, and do they respond to touch? And the answer is the result confirmed that yes, babies do not indeed feel pain, and that they process it similarly to adults. Until as recently as the 1980s, researchers assumes newborns did not have fully developed pain receptors and believe that any responses babies had to pokes or pricks were merely muscular reactions. For the last question, so can newborns distinguish the different tastes? The taste buds in newborns can be found on the tonsils and the back of the throat, as well as on the tongue. During her first 3 months, baby can distinguish between sweet and bitter tastes. She or he prefers sweet flavors like the taste of breast milk, yung pinapadidi sa mga mother.